says you're about to update 1009 rows, which is what I really want to do. And so I click OK. Now let's go look at that table. And voila, we have a bunch of mess. I'd like to welcome you back again to another chance that we have to learn a little bit more about Microsoft Access. Today what I want to talk about is queries that you can make that are more than just select queries. Queries that do some work such as updating data, queries that do other work such as making tables for you. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and open the database container here. And this database container, you see I have some Access objects over here, some tables and some queries already built. And what I'm going to do is I want to share with you the abilities that Access has to help you create a lot of different queries. Let's go ahead and launch into that. So what I want to do is I want to go to Create here. I want to go ahead and go to Query Design. And let's choose a table. Let's go ahead and choose the sales history table, and I'm going to add that here. We have a few fields we can work with, and we can play with that. We can go ahead and double click on this title bar here, and we can drag and drop all the fields into it. We're just going to throw the fields into it and see what we can play with. So now remember this ribbon up here. This ribbon up here is the thing that helps you get everything done. And we're going to go ahead and cover the make table query, the append query, the update query, the crosstab, and the delete query. So a lot of good tools over here on this right hand side. What I want to start with though is the totals query. The totals query is really neat when you've got a bunch of raw data that deals with numbers, and in this case sales history has revenue. So let's go ahead and we want to group this. Instead of group this by, what we want to do is sum the revenue here, and everything else is going to be grouped. Now notice when I click the down arrow here, the default is group by. When I hit the down arrow here, I could sum it, I could average, I could find the min value or the maximum value, or I could count the number of records. I could even look for the standard deviation. And then, other things too, the first and last, which is if I did it on revenue, would be min and max. So first and last on the customer name would be the customer that began with A, that would be on the top of the A list, and the last would be on the bottom of the alphabet, that type of thing. I can even create expressions to put in there. And those expressions are the mathematical expressions that I talked about in the previous video where you could actually do formulas. So let's go ahead and I'm going to turn this off because I want to get, just on a select query, I want to get a record count. And there are 81,951 records in this thing. Now, as we look at this, we've got several that are in the same period, ordered different products, but they were in the same period. So that gives me an idea. How about within the same period, I check each customer, how much they ordered. To do that, I'd have to get rid of product ID, because product ID here looks like makes the records unique. And so I want to go ahead and get rid of the product ID so I can see the company name, the state that they resided in, the period, 2013 August, it looks in the top record there, and the amount of revenue in each period with each customer. So if I do that, I come back here to design view and take the product ID field out here, and let's run it now by putting the totals query on and summing up the revenue. As we run this, now we get 22,000 records, so it slimmed down by a quarter of the total number of records. And we have in period 8 here, we have $107.09, and then we went to 2014, and it looks like January of 2014. So that maybe they didn't order between October and through December. They didn't place any orders, but you can see the totals over here. Now let's get a little bit more serious here. We can also take this and say, hey, how valuable are my customers? So let's do just by customer name and the total amount of revenue for the periods that are in the database. We could run that, And now we have only 6,000 records, so we must have 6,000 different customer names in this file. And let's say the sum of revenue tells us how valuable a customer is from a revenue standpoint. And we come over here, and let's say we want to sort this ascending. And now we can it'll sort from low to high. That's probably not as valuable. I don't want to know the least valuable customers. So let's sort it descending and go here. And we find that Suwashi Corporation does $2.5 million during the time that we've had them as a customer. So those are the kind of things you can do. I'm going to click on view here. Let's look and see what kind of an average each customer has. Their average orders. Now the PALMBC Corporation has orders of 20,000 on average. Now that might make them actually more valuable than the other company that we had when we just summed the values, because the Suwashi Corporation here, I'm going to copy that. What was their average? So I can come down here and put in the criteria here and go ahead and look at the average. So the criteria is going to be the Suwashi Corporation. So I can find out, even though they're my top revenue company, their average is only $3,929. So from a financial analysis standpoint, you could play around with these numbers and let Access do a lot of this heavy lifting so that you could see what's going on with each customer. So I want to try just as a possibility here. I'm going to go ahead and sum this, and I want descending on the average. Now, if I run that, I can see both the sum and the average at the same time. And that might also be valuable. And I could do all kinds of different variations on these queries doing it that way. So I can play around a lot. Okay. Now let's go ahead and come back out here. Let's turn off that totals query and take out this criteria. And I also want to take out so that there's not sorting on anything. So let's say I need to know where my marketing is doing the best. So I'm going to stick the state back in here, and I want to go ahead and I want to group it by the state. Okay. I don't want customer name because I'm not too concerned about customer name in this, but I want to see what the average and total sum of the revenue is by state. And yeah, let's see if I can develop some trend lines by period as well. And I want to sort this one ascending. No, I want to period. I do want sorted ascending, yes. And so I want to go ahead and hit run. Now, what we see here is, as far as the average of revenue and the sum of the revenue, I've got period 01 here, and I've got all of these listed. Now, this is period 01, but gosh, my states are all scattered. So let's correct that. Let's go ahead and move state on over here, and then we'll run it again. And here we've got period 2012-01, okay? And now we've got the states all in one column. And it looks like they're also in alphabetical order. I don't think that was intentional because we didn't tell it to do an ascending order. So we'll make sure that it's in that right order. And so now we can see Arizona and so forth. If we wanted to do sum of the revenue here, we could sort by period, take the sort off of state, and we could sum the revenue for each state here by taking the ascending out of there. And let's put descending here to see which our big states are. So Florida is our big state in January of 2012. In February of 2012, Florida again at 1.8 million, and it goes down. And then 900,000, Florida seems to be our heavy hitter. Maybe this company that I'm illustrating here is based in Florida, and that's where they started out. So they have more customers in Florida, that type of thing. Okay. Now, what I want is I want to then take this, put it back in design view, and I want to make a new table for this. and I'm going to call it something else. So I'm going to switch this to a make table query, and I'm going to call it TBL and revenue by period and state. Okay. Now I can click OK on it. What's going to happen is if I run this, it's going to say you're about to paste 1009 rows into a new table. So it is literally asking me whether I want to make a new table. Well, yes, I do. That's what I wanted to accomplish. Now, after I've done the table and made it, you'll notice that over here, this table revenue by period and state. If I put that in design view, what you'll see is it'll pick up the data type from the table that we created. It'll pick up the short text as well for period and state. Now, period could have been an actual date field. And if it were a date field, then I would probably have wanted to do a conversion or something. At this point, the field is just text. So I couldn't do any mathematics on, 3 months or 3 years or how long a customer's been a customer by going with the first and last record and then subtracting the difference. I couldn't do that when the state or the period is just a short text. But that's the data that I have for an example here. So I'm just going to let that be. Okay. So I'm back in design view here, and over here under the design tab here, if you lose your ribbon, it's this query tools design ribbon here. If I now want to append, it'll bring this dialog box. It'll assume that I want to append to the same table that I made earlier, which makes sense, because a lot of times what you'll do is you'll create a delete query, which I'll come to, and then later on after that you'll create the delete query, you'll run it to purge out the table, then you'll rerun the query that you want to put data back in, and it'll be an append query. Okay, so if I click OK here, let's go ahead then and create a new data query, and I'm going to go back to this table that I just made, and I'm going to add it and close that here. I'm going to go ahead and just double click on the star here, and the star says I'm going to just choose all fields all at once, and I'm going to say that it's going to be a delete query. Now what that wildcard delete here does is it says I'm going to delete all records, all columns from this table. It basically drops the data out of the table. Okay, it does it quickly and efficiently, which is really, really nice. And so if I run this and it says you're about to delete those 1009 rows, if I say yes, they're all gone. If I open the table, it's all clear. If I go back to this query, now this query is an append query. Remember, we made it an append query. If I run that now, we can put those 1009 records right back in. So as my data changes over time, I can manipulate the data. I can take snapshots and slices of that data, throw it in a table, do some other manipulations on it, and prepare it for a report or another form or any type of use that I want to create it for. So now what I want to do is I want to show you how to build a query that you can do an update on some data. Like for example, when I open this data table like this, I see the period and I don't like it. I don't like PD in front of it. 2012-01, it looks like it came from a database that used to put information just in text fields, and obviously this is a text field from the previous things that we've gone through. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to update that period value to be a real date. I'm going to leave it as January 2012. I'm going to have month and then year. And so in doing that, what I want to do is run an update query to do that. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to the design view, add this table. And what I want to do is I want to update that period field. So I'll put period into this query. Now in doing that now, what I want to do is click on update to tell it it's going to be an update query. And in that, here it brings up this update to line. The update to line then gives you the ability to put a value in here that you want to change the period value to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the builder. Gives me a little bit of bigger place to work. If I go into the functions, I can go ahead and navigate to built-in functions. And down here in the text functions, I find two that I want to use in this case. One is going to be the mid, and the other one's going to be the right. Okay, so I'm going to start with right and open paren. Now, right and open paren means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, starting from the right side of whatever string I put in there, and the string I'm going to put in there is, I'm going to open it with a bracket so it recognizes that it's a string, and comma, and then the length that I want to come from the right hand side, and I want the last two characters in the field. So that, close that, and we've got the right two characters in that field. Now what I want to do is I want to concatenate a slash character. So the concatenate symbol is an ampersand, and then put in quotes the text that you want, which in this case is a slash, so it's going to look like month/year, typical of a year, of a date. And I'm going to put in the ampersand here then. And now I want to do a mid string, and the string is going to be period again. And notice I can close that with brackets, and the brackets tell it that I'm looking for a field. I'm not looking for a text value here. I'm looking for a field. And where I want to start is the third character in. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to lop off PD and start with that third character. And I want the next four characters. So I'm going to do comma and four characters and close paren. And there's my formula. I'm going to click OK, and I just like to tab out of it so that it does a little bit of syntax error checking for me. Access likes it at this point, and in liking that at that point, if I were to then go view it, it would give me the values that are going to be changed. It does not give me the value that it is going to be changed to. If I wanted to see that, I would need to then go put this formula. I can copy it here and what it like, and I can put that formula there, make this a select query. I can then view what it's going to look like so I can proof it. Okay, and sometimes that's useful, as many mistakes I've made prior have indicated. So this is what it does look like today. This is what it looks like if I use the query. So I'm going to go ahead and now make that an update query again, and it brings back my formula here. It doesn't like that one anyway, so I'm going to delete it. And if I run it now, I'm going to update 1009 records. And if I open the table, voila, it looks like month/year. And so now I have the month/year looking the way I want to. If I wanted to then go to check and see this, I could possibly make this a date field. And I could go here and save it maybe. And now if I actually open this table, that would actually be a date table. And notice it doesn't like to not put that day in there, so it's going to put the first of the month there for each one of my months. So I could now change it and convert it to a date field. So, that would be an appropriate way that you could then convert any date field by making it look appropriately and then changing the field type, and you've got it converted to a date. And we'll show you other possibly more elegant ways to do that later as well. So I'm going to close this. I think there's this one last query I want to look at, and that's this crosstab query. And I have a crosstab query already put together right here, and I want to show it to you. When you look at the crosstab query, what you're looking at is a lot like a pivot table in an Excel spreadsheet. So here we've got different additions of revenue over here and different areas of the country. So you've got different categories of equipment, and different areas of the country. And the way they built that was actually quite simple. Notice, though, that as you work on this, it's not as flexible. It is not as flexible as an Excel spreadsheet. Simply just doesn't have quite as much abilities. So pumping the data out to an Excel spreadsheet might be your viable solution there. If you only need a simple pivot, then by all means you can do it in Access quite easy. Because you'll notice that you can see there are 3 fields here, and there's always at least three fields in a pivot table or in a crosstab query. The one has the value, the other one has a column heading, and the other one has row headings. Now you can have multiple rows and multiple row headings, but you can't have multiple column headings. And you notice we had a lot of different columns, and what this does is the same thing as a pivot table does, is it separates into the various different values that you put in your column field. And then, of course, the values are separated based on the intersection between the column heading and the row heading, and gives you the value in there, whether it's a count or a sum or an average, whatever it is. Okay? So that gives you a quick tally of all the different things that are available in other types of queries beyond just a select query, and lets you understand how to build your basic ones. We'll come back to this and build even more complex queries as we go on and attach them to reports and forms and do all those wonderful things. And until that time comes again, we'll see you. Thanks for joining.